Thanks.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of the Decred Assembly. I'm your host, Tyler, and today on the show, I have my co-host, Austin Williams, and we are joined by OpenBazaar's Brian Hoffman and Dr. Washington Sanchez. So before we get started, we're going to talk about a quick update going on with Decred. So I just want to talk a little bit about the staking difficulty algorithm that we had update that has severely changed the amount of tickets in the pool, and also is really making a big difference on being able to purchase tickets. So as you can see, what happened before, everybody would buy tickets during these low rounds, and it would consequently drive the ticket price up really high the next round. And then that would affect the next 3 rounds until we got a low ticket price. So you can see this yellow line, this is when everybody's buying tickets. And unfortunately, after that, the algorithm was just totally jacked, and high ticket prices would follow. So after our hard fork, we have now reached some stability, and we're actually seeing ticket prices and the number of tickets in the pool shrink significantly. So ticket prices are stabilizing, and you can see that we're seeing much more fair distribution between rounds on buying tickets. And Dave Collins shared this awesome image with me that shows how many tickets we were seeing between each round in the pool. And what we're seeing is we should actually be close to about 41,000 tickets in the pool, and we're actually reaching that sort of equilibrium. So that's really awesome that this change that we voted on and forked with is making a significant impact, and should make it a lot easier for people to participate in the staking process. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this off. And yeah, so how's it going, guys? Thanks to everybody that's on the show. We have 17 live viewers. Please like, share, and comment on the show, tweet about it, let other people know that the show's going on. And yeah, welcome to the show, guys. How's it going, Brian?
Good. Thank you so much for having us. I know that Washington and I don't ever decline a chance to babble on and on about what we're doing. So
that's awesome. And how's it going, Washington? How are you doing? How's Australia?
I'm good. Australia's wonderful.
Very convincing.
Very far away from everything and everyone, which is nice.
And how are you doing today, Austin? How's California?
Pretty good, man. Cali's great. Beautiful weather as always.
That's awesome. Really jealous. It's hot as balls in the Midwest right now. All right, so I guess we're going to get started with our questions. We took some community. We did a community poll to gather some more questions before we got started with the interview today. And I think Austin and I are just going to go back and forth and hammer these guys with some questions about specifically OpenBazaar and OpenBazaar 2.0 coming up. And then we'll dive into some more questions regarding the future of Bitcoin and their thoughts. So I guess I will start with Brian Washington. You guys can feel free to answer at your leisure. But so how did each of you guys get involved in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in the space in the early years?
Washington, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I don't remember the exact date I got into, like what year exactly. I think the earliest I tweeted about it was in 2011, but I think I'd heard about it in maybe 2010. I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos on gold and Austrian economics, and then I came across Bitcoin, and I don't remember whether it was Gavin or Mike or possibly even Amir who was giving a presentation on it and said, oh, we have Bitcoin and we have a fixed 21 million supply cap. And I'm like, bull crap, that will never work. And I just moved on. I'm like, I'm sorry, you cannot have digital scarcity. You know, good luck. This is funny. And then it was kind of niggling in the back of my head. And then I finally, took a look at it, the white paper, and was like, huh, this is actually pretty cool. This is like the white paper was most importantly only 9 pages long, or however many pages was, and it was like accessible, understandable, unlike many of the white papers that are out today. But most importantly, it just made like a great deal of sense, and I kind of became interested. And then I remember when the price of Bitcoin was just like a few cents. I'm like, oh wow, man, it would be amazing one day if it ever hit parity with the US dollar. And then it hit parity with the US dollar. I'm like, oh wow. And then it hit $30, and that's the first crash. And I've been following it on ever since. And of course, I was a spectator, not an early buyer, like an idiot. So I missed the boat there. But I've always thought that Bitcoin was just fantastic. What a wonderful idea, and it was a nice change from believing in a lot of economic theories that unfortunately nobody will take seriously or implement in terms of government policy. And then you have something here that is just kind of transcendent to that, just bypasses it completely. And so, yeah.
Awesome. And what about you, Brian?
Yeah, I don't really have like an economic background or anything. My background has been mostly computer science and just IT in general. But I think when Bitcoin came out, I was working on projects mostly doing like public key infrastructure implementations and like identity management stuff. So like helping government agencies like integrate their two-factor auth and like smart cards and retina scanners and all this stuff into their security infrastructure. But I just being in that space, we often heard and talked about Bitcoin, because this concept of having a complete PKI infrastructure, like where nobody really kind of maintains that, like there's no escrow database where like, oh, I lost my key, how do I get it back? Which would happen, people lose their smart card, or the government can like pull that bad boy out of escrow and reissue the smart card, and you get back access to your email and all that. But imagine like if you're the president, you got access and you lose your smart card and all of his emails are gone forever. It's like that can't happen. But in Bitcoin, obviously you're going to torture your key and lose all of your money for all of time. So it does seem like what Washington was saying, it's like some of this stuff just sounds ridiculous. Like it doesn't work conceptually when you think about it at first, but then when you start to research it and look at it and you're seeing it actually work in practice, that's what's so fascinating. And I think that's really what drove me to trying to figure out a way to work on some kind of project, is that, I'm not like, personally, I don't do a lot of deep mind, research kind of conceptual work. Like I don't sit in my office and like think about things and write it down on paper and do all this. I'm much more of like a hands-on, let's get this to the people, let's use it, let's show how this can work and change things. And I think that's probably naturally why Washington and I worked so well together early on, is because I think he was able to take the patience and the diligence to like really think through stuff, and I was really great at the execution part, and we kind of put that together, and like each of our halves of a man equaled like one half, like one whole man. So or maybe Washington disagrees, maybe it's like a man and a half, like he's the man and I'm half a man. But like, yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a lot of these projects, like they only work because the right ingredients come together at the right time, right? And so it's the same with people, I think, in a lot of ways. But yeah, so I was super fascinated in it from a technical standpoint, and just always followed it. I guess I was probably maybe late 2011, early 2012 where I really started like looking at it seriously, but was kind of aware of it early on. So
yeah, I can already see the memes of half Brian, half Washo.
Like I'll be like the ass end of it, and he'll be like the horse head.
So awesome. Well, thanks for that intro, guys. So you guys work on this really awesome project called OpenBazaar, which I've I've just absolutely been in love with since for a long time, even before I think OpenBazaar even formed. That this idea was kind of being passed around, and you know, can you guys tell me a little bit about what OpenBazaar is and what you guys are kind of aiming to do?
Sure. You know, OpenBazaar at its heart is decentralized peer-to-peer marketplace, and it uses Bitcoin as the key component for the currency, which allows, you know, with the combination of those technologies, peer-to-peer networking, distributed storage, cryptocurrency, it allows you to remove the middleman from marketplaces like eBay or Amazon. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but you know, generally that's what it is. And so, you know, we take advantage of concepts like multi-signature transactions so that we can protect our users when they're making purchases. And you know, we just have been working on it for the last 3 years, like evolving and creating what is now OpenBazaar. It started out as dark market, which was just like a proof of concept, but you know, fundamentally, it's just, you know, it's more of an evolution to improve it and like make it more trustworthy and something that could eventually perhaps supersede some of these marketplaces that we think are treating a lot of people unfairly or creating these like natural monopolies. So I don't know, Washington, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think that's pretty much spot on. I think maybe the only thing I'd add is that OpenBazaar is actually the nexus of lots of different pieces coming together. You know, you have obviously the decentralized money bit, the reputation side, the distributed storage. It's not one thing. It's like multiple things that need to come together kind of perfectly in order to make it work. So,
yeah. And so I mean, so you guys launched what, almost a year and a half ago? Is that right? 2 years ago?
Yeah. So like the way that it worked is there kind of was technically like 4 versions. There was dark market came out, which they dropped onto GitHub, which was basically like this like very like lightweight Python code. It was like only a couple thousand lines of code, barely worked. Just kind of you could sell something to somebody and like pay, and that was about it. And chat with them. And then after we forked it and made it OpenBazaar, it became this kind of like Frankenstein thing where we tried to fix what was in the proof of concept and turn it into something production ready. So we spent about a year doing that. Towards the end of that year was when we got the funding to start the company, and we kind of basically started rewriting it from scratch. And so that's kind of that's what we worked on, and that's what came out in April 2016, and is what you can download right now from the website. That's 1.0. So it's kind of like the 3rd version technically, but it's the first real legit version that we felt was feature complete, or at the time. And then now the last year or so, we've been working on 2.0, which is hopefully going to come out soon. So
awesome. Yeah, we have lots of questions about 2.0, but one question that kind of I'm thinking of right now is, so you talked about you guys got funding, I guess in the past like 2 or 3 years, and can you talk about some of the people who are backing the project? And because I know Mark Andreessen is one of those, and I was, you know, if you could talk a little bit about you know, why they decided to back such a, you know, a decentralized project like OpenBazaar.
I think I guess it was probably like around October or November of 2014. I don't know, Washington, maybe you can correct me on the dates, but like it was around that time where the project had been going for about 6 or 7 months, and it was like starting to get a lot of momentum. I mean, we were like dominating our Bitcoin whenever we would just say anything, and like people were really contributing to it a lot, and things were like the Twitter account was getting like unmanageable, and we were just like, I don't know about you, but I mean, I literally can't go to work, come home, feed my kids, put them to sleep, and then work on this till 3 a.m. every night. Like, it's just insane.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of workload. It was like 2 jobs, full-time jobs. And, you know, and Washington's wife was pregnant at the time, I believe, you know, and so.
We just had a baby.
Oh, yeah, you just had a baby. So it was like, it was crazy for everybody.
Actually, my daughter was born the day Dark Market was released.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So right before we all started everything. And so it was just insane. And we just got together and we were like, look, this seems like it has legs, but Like we can't keep going. Like it's just going to be like really, it's either going to be really shitty because we don't have the time to work on it, or you know, we need to like be serious. And so we decided like we were going to try and do it full time, but at the time there were no ICOs, so we couldn't like be like, oh, it's easy, let's raise $30 million right now. Like, do it, you know, why not? Let's do it. I think at the time we kind of had guesstimated that we'd probably only be able to raise, even with all the excitement around it, probably like around $50,000. And we were like, that's just not enough to take some people full time and work on it. And so the only other real viable option was either to take angel investment or like VC investment. So I basically just started poking around, and Washington sent me this article that Union Square Ventures wrote. Joel Monegro, who was previously an associate over there, had written an article about dark markets and how they're like pioneering these interesting new technologies. Like they were like hedging markets to get away from volatility of Bitcoin. They were doing escrow. They were, you know, it was uncensorable. It was on Tor. It was like it was crazy. Like they were doing all these things that like nobody else would even touch, and it was working. I mean, they were doing like tens of millions of dollars of transactions. And so they wrote this article about how like maybe these capabilities are going to make it into mainstream and like really disrupt traditional marketplaces. And it was like perfectly matched up with what we were doing. And so I reached out to them and I was like, hey, I know you'd never be interested in this like Silk Road you can't shut down with Bitcoin, but like you guys are talking about it and you think it's interesting. So can you give us some advice on like how we might get investment on this, or like who we should talk to? And I think we did a Skype call with Joel. It was like a pretty short, well, it was like about an hour call. And like we explained everything we were doing. And he was like, this is so awesome. This is amazing. But yeah, we would never invest in this. And like, and we're like, okay, great. Thank you. And they were like, you know, they kind of did the whole, like I wouldn't date you, but I have some friends that might date you. So like, they're like, we could.
Andreessen will invest in it though.
Well, yeah, but this is before that, right? So like, we got off the call and we're like, okay, well, at least we think it might be viable to some investor. But like later that night, like, I don't know, it was probably almost 2 a.m. Joel DM'd me on Twitter and was like, come to New York and talk with us. And so we basically got on a train and zipped up to New York. And at the time, Washington couldn't come because he was in Australia, obviously, and we didn't have the money to send him, but he like Skyped in. So it's like we're in USV's office and here's Fred Wilson and here's like, you know, Washington on the same screen. It's like, what's going on here? But
4 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, he had to like get up at like 4 a.m. and do this call. But yeah, I mean, ultimately they decided to invest in us, and the way we got Andreessen was they were both on the board of Coinbase, and like I guess Fred Wilson was like talking about how they were going to invest in us, and Chris Dixon was like, whoa, oh, I want in on that. And so they called us and they were like, do you want Andreessen to invest with you? And we're like,
okay,
yes.
All right. Fair enough.
Sure. Yeah. So
awesome.
that was pretty much it. I mean, there was really not much more to it than that. They already kind of believed in the vision of what we were doing, and that helped a lot. And yeah, they've been great investment partners so far.
And we completely realized that this story is very unusual. This is not the norm. You know, usually you have to go shop around, you know, dozens and dozens, if not like 100 VCs, and, you know, build your raise piecemeal at a time. And this was just like, you know, unbelievable what had happened. Yeah. So.
Well, I'm sure like everybody, I mean, I'm sure for them, they were like, this just makes a lot of sense. So.
Yeah, I think for the motivations, USV have often said that they've been very interested in disintermediating, you know, these centralized companies that have just established themselves and started extracting value from the very people that built the network effects that they're taking advantage of. And I think for Andreessen, they were, you know, they've often said that, you know, they desired a currency for the internet, and a marketplace for the internet to go with it just makes sense. So I think they both see it from two different points of view. So
yeah, I don't. It's interesting because it seems to me like they don't see a direct financial gain coming from OB or OB1 itself, but rather from the effects it's going to have on the overall ecosystem.
I mean, I think over the last 2 years we've had them as an investor. Obviously their perspective on the whole market has changed. I mean, they spent almost a whole year not really investing in any crypto companies, kind of watching and observing. And I think they've started to form this thesis around ICOs and not necessarily just the ICO process, but this idea that like a token could incentivize network effects. And I mean, they really believe in network effects. And I think they're right to assume that like the existing projects, I mean, OpenBazaar included, have not really like done any barnstorming in terms of like gathering users onto decentralized networks. Like, can you name a really successful decentralized network that has like millions of users right now? No, the most popular businesses on Bitcoin are like Coinbase, BitPay. They're all still kind of like centralized Bitcoin utilities and and marketplaces. I think personally, my opinion is that it's still really early, like in OpenBazaar or like a BISC or like whatever Shapeshift is doing with them with their new decentralized marketplace or whatever, or like any of these other or yours. Those guys are going to need several years to kind of perfect this and get people on board. It's new technology. And so I still think it's early to kind of write that off. I think a lot of people are saying, oh, tokens are the easy way to do this. Like if we get people excited about tokens and they're willing to put tens of millions of dollars in this, that's exactly how we incentivize people. But my issue is that it's so decoupled from like the success of a token is very decoupled from the success of a network, at least what I'm seeing right now. I haven't really seen the example where the token made the network like better, except for Bitcoin itself.
Right.
Like literally, except for Bitcoin itself. It's not to say it won't happen, but I think the next few years will be really, really interesting to see like what really succeeds.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I definitely have my opinions on ICOs. I'm I'm not a fan of what's going on right now, and all of them are just a get rich quick kind of scheme. A lot of people aren't contributing value, and one of the things that I think is going to be the most interesting about ICOs is like these startups that should have died like years ago. They're just gonna live on, and people are gonna buy their stupid tokens when they're not worth anything, and then they're gonna come in and have some sort of revamp and then pump the price back up, and then like it's going to be this never-ending cycle of like shit.
Well, I mean, that's the thing with scams, right? Like they never die; they just kind of reinvent themselves, and it's like the same kind of like you see these like MLM stuff, and like it just keeps getting recycled, right? And it's the same thing. So for us, we're keeping our heads down. We're working on things that we think are valuable, and we're not getting distracted by that. Would we like to drive Ferraris and like tell our users that we're working really hard when we're not? I mean, sometimes that sounds like an interesting option, but personally, I get a lot more value from like really working hard within the community. And I know we take a lot of shit for having perspectives on Bitcoin in certain ways, and we'll probably talk about that later. But like, we're just trying to do what we think is best and kind of ignoring the bullshit.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we'd like to announce the OpenBazaar token. You guys can...
Thanks for inviting us. We didn't let you know this, but.
Well, I mean, have you guys thought like recently like maybe we should do a token? I mean, has it been something that's kind of really crossed your minds? And I mean, just seeing all the other projects and what they're doing, like I feel like your project at least has value. And I think, there's a lot of people in the space that would probably just invest in your project because they really believe in the idea behind OpenBazaar, whether or not the token's going to make money or not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's oh, go ahead, Austin.
I was going to say, if they wanted to do that, they could just give you money directly. Like,
well, that's
but then you don't get a token that you can pump the price, right?
But that's why it doesn't feel right. And internally, we've talked a lot about tokens. I mean, we've wavered. The good thing about having 3 co-founders is that there's always one person at any given time that's got like a little bit of sanity. Like the other 2 may go crazy, but like there's one to keep us in check. And so, I mean, God, I mean, we've had conversations about let's just switch to credit cards. I mean, literally, we've had that conversation, you know, and you're like, what the F were we thinking at the time? You know,
Yeah,
but like,
exactly.
you get
And it
frustrated,
alternates
or
too. Like the two people who are for it tends to alternate. And there's
Yeah.
like one of us is like, no, are you crazy? That's stupid. And then we like back off and then
Yeah, so that's good. We have checks and balances internally, but like, yeah, no, we've thought about tokens. I mean, ultimately, I think it comes down to some true utility. Like if somebody comes along and proves that there's some way to like incentivize users to be on a platform more in a way that like doesn't just become like a shit show around speculation, that could be interesting. I mean, the concept of having some kind of stable coin within the marketplace would be interesting because, you know, obviously we deal with a lot of volatility issues. You know, that's problematic for a lot of users. Like they don't understand why if they price something at $10 roughly, you know, at the time, that the next week they got to come and adjust the price, or like, you know, it just makes the UX like a lot harder compared to legacy marketplaces. And so having things that would solve that, you could do possibly through another token, but ultimately the most paramount you know, thing that we want to come out of the project is for it to be secure. Like we want people to feel like it's trustworthy and reliable and they can do things. And right now Bitcoin is, you know, the head honcho there. And you know, people are free to use all other currencies to pay through Shapeshift. I know it kind of sucks and it's kludgy, but right now, you know, I don't know how many people are on Dogecoin and really want to like buy stuff. It's probably really, really small. I mean, Bitcoin is really, really small. So relative to like traditional marketplaces. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't like that answer. Like Charlie Lee kind of like called me out and was like, you should take Litecoin because it will make everything better. And I'm like, yeah, it'll make Litecoin better. You know, and so we can get those pitches from every coin. But yeah, I think in the future we'd love to be coin agnostic, and perhaps even someday we'll have our own token. But right now it just doesn't seem genuine for us to pursue that, at least what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I know internally the culture within the founders and just the project in general has to make something that actually works first before even considering any of these other things. I mean, sure, we've thought about tokens like Brian said, but you know, I think within us, we have something to prove here. We believe that this marketplace can exist by itself, and it needs to stand on its own merits, not because everybody's invested in a token, right? Either this idea is going to work or it's not going to work. And having a token is only going to delay the inevitable. So,
absolutely. So this is a great answer.
Yeah.
So, and you guys talked about you know, altcoin integrations and stuff. So I know that you guys wrote, or I think Chris Pascia, is that how you pronounce his name? I know he wrote a GitHub README on basically how to integrate your altcoin. Have you guys had any altcoins submit pull requests to with the proper stuff that they need to be able to integrate into OpenBazaar so far?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to throw anybody else under the bus, but I think you see this a lot in the space, is that projects they're like, you should integrate us, and then you're like, okay, well, here's the way you could do it. You could help us, and they're like, no, we just wanted you to do it. And you're like, well, I mean, why would I do that? It's only going to help you out. So,
yeah,
you know, I mean, it could help us out, but like we just explained, the volume is probably low enough where it won't really help us more than it will help your coin get pumped when we announce that we're taking you. I mean, you saw that with like Alphabay and stuff, right? Like they'd be like, oh, we're taking Monero, and then it'd pump up, right? So that's what people are really looking for, I think, right now. Yeah, if people are willing to help, then yeah, we'll help them. You know, we did design 2.0 in mind with multiple wallets to be supported. Like right now, we've actually gotten it somewhat working with Monero, and I believe, or not Monero, sorry, Zcash. And because Litecoin is so similar, it would probably be really, really easy to plug that in. You can actually run OpenBazaar 2.0 with Bitcoin D rather than like our wallet, which is really cool. And so it's rather, you know, modular in that way. We'd love it to be even more so, but you know, the hard part is not really that. It's like each coin is kind of different, and so you have to like handle those UX changes and work, and that would require collaboration with us.
Sure.
And it's like, we can't just do that for you. Like, we don't have the bandwidth and the money and the time to go and just integrate your coin and every other 100 coins that are out there.
Sure.
So it's a you know, we've provided like a little bit of a framework for people to start looking at it. When they show some interest, we'll work with them.
Awesome. And so I know you guys integrated with btcd with the native wallet Bitcoin suite. Can you guys talk about why you guys, because our developers from Decred, you know, built that library for that implementation of Bitcoin? Just, you know, curious why you guys decided to go with btcd over Bitcoin D or others.
Well, I mean, I became familiar with btcd, I think, through Let's Talk Bitcoin. I remember when it first started out, like, it was this idea to really build like a nice, clean, modular implementation of Bitcoin. I mean, at the time we were using libbitcoin, so we weren't looking to switch, but you know, that concept has always been really nice, and I've always really heard great things about the code quality and the way that the product was managed. But what ultimately drove the decision to move to btcd was that we knew we wanted to switch to an SPV wallet and have something internal. Like, up in version 1, there is no real wallet. There's kind of like it's kind of a pass-through thing, right, for the multi-sig, but it's not a true wallet. And we were looking at options, and then we were also switching to IPFS, which their main implementation was written in Go. And so, you know, Chris was like, well, maybe we should just switch the whole code base to Go, and we'll just use btcd as the backend for the wallet, and we'll use, you know, we can write a SPV wallet on top of that really easily, and then, you know, we have IPFS, and everything will be nice and clean and be Go. And so, you know, that was a interesting call. I mean, at the time we were using Python and stuff, and everybody was familiar with that. And so switching your entire code base to a new language is like a difficult decision, but I think ultimately it's really paid off. And
Definitely,
I think it's been a really great option. I think the team is really, really strong over at btcd. And, you know, I mean, I don't know a ton about Decred. I haven't really had the time to delve into it, even if I wanted to, but you know, it's been a really good thing, and we're really excited to get 2.0 out. Like, we're really, I think it's going to be way better than the first version.
Awesome.
Yeah. On that note, can you talk about give us an idea of like how has user adoption been for 1.0, and if you've run into any sort of friction points, and how you plan on addressing those in the 2.0 release?
You want to take that, Washington?
Yeah, so initially when we launched 1.0, we had a pretty amazing surge of people. We had like a couple of 10,000, like 10,000 or so nodes come online, and that was really exciting. And immediately the bugs fled, and the pain points started showing up. And over time, as things kind of settled down, and you know, we were basically seeing something like 200, 300 stores staying up online 24/7. We immediately recognized where the pain points were. And it was around about that time when, you know, well, it was a little bit before that, but the technology for IPFS became much more mature, and, you know, there was code available, and the call was made to say, look, we really need to build from the ground up to solve some of these challenges. And these challenges were quite straightforward. With 1.0, in order to have your store accessible to other users, you had to have your store running 24/7. So if you downloaded the application, you put it on your laptop, you turned it on, and then you close your laptop, that's it. Nobody could access your store. It wasn't shared or distributed anywhere else. So that was problem number one. And so because of that, you know, you had to have some kind of technical knowledge on how to deploy your node onto like DigitalOcean or some virtual private server. And then like the requirements to actually sell on OpenBazaar just started going up and up and up. And clearly there was something that we had to fix. And you know, we could either slave away at our own kind of implementation on Python and experience a lot of the the pain that we didn't want to experience, or we could switch to something that was, ready to use, and it worked brilliantly. So I think that was a major pain point. Second one, the absence of a wallet was also a problem, because a lot of people who wanted to try out OpenBazaar who weren't familiar with Bitcoin, they also had to go and find a wallet and then figure out how to use that, and then what a Bitcoin address is, and it was a bit of a bit of a mess.
That was kind of a conscious decision, though, on our part, though. I mean, like, as well. I mean, we realized that was probably not a great option, but at the time we were trying to do what was right for the community, which was that there are all these wallet builders, like pretty much all the main apps were like wallets. So we're like, why do we want to like have yet another app, another wallet app, like our own, and have to maintain it and secure it and stuff? And so we were like, okay, well, we'll let the wallets provide that service and we'll just tie it in. And that seemed reasonable at the time, but what happens is that it's not integrated enough, right? Like, people just, like, when you go to sell on eBay, you don't have to bring your own wallet, to the service. It's just, it kind of, and then you're asking people to jump out of their app and pay and come back and do all that. So yeah, in hindsight, it was an honorable decision, but like not a great one for our users.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of other little issues here and there. I think there wasn't a lot of robustness in connecting to your node, and the stability in the peer-to-peer network again, and that would all be fixed by switching to IPFS, which was far more stable, and this was absolutely designed to overcome all of the major pain points that we were having. So it wasn't too long after release 1.0, and we started to see what the major pain points were. Like, guys, we really have to do it all in IPFS. It's like, glad you're happy with 1.0, but damn, we gotta fix all this. And what we're doing with 2.0, even though it's taken us a bit of time, a little bit longer than we expected, we feel it's really going to be worth it, because all of those problems are solved. Connectivity problems gone. You can create your store, put your listings up, close your laptop, turn off your phone, whatever, and it's still there. And
yeah, I mean,
they're just some of the amazing features.
And amazingly enough, I mean, like, even though we're kind of deprecating the 1.0 network, we're still seeing like user adoption double month over month, which is kind of crazy. And I mean, it's still not like massive. It's not like we're getting 1 million users a month or anything, but like the fact that, it seemed to be kind of plateauing, and then now we're starting to get this renewed interest, and it's like doubling, which is showing that there's still like a really strong desire to have this kind of capability. So I think once 2.0 comes out, yeah, it's going to give them a tool that they actually can use, and like they won't feel like they're doing more work than they get out of it.
Yeah. And you have a mobile app coming out too, right? So 2.0 is going to launch with mobile capability too. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
well,
Washington drove that. I'll let you talk, Washington, about it, but I just want to make sure that, I mean, the mobile app is an OB1 product, and the OpenBazaar desktop is like a completely different, like they're two different things, and Washington can explain the nuances between that. But
well, 1 second, right before we get into the mobile app, and I know Washington's really excited about talking about that. For all those users out there that don't know what IPFS means, it means InterPlanetary File System. So maybe one of you guys can just give us like a super low level like explanation of what the hell IPFS is and why OpenBazaar is going to benefit from that.
You want to take that, Washington?
Can you take that?
Okay, sure.
You take that.
Yeah.
Been talking for a while.
So IPFS is one of the projects that's been created by Protocol Labs, along with like Filecoin and a couple others. And basically, it's a distributed file storage system, peer-to-peer network. And so it uses a couple of other protocols underneath, including like libp2p. And the reason why that's interesting is because, when you're building a peer-to-peer network, and Bitcoin's included in this, you have to create your own peer-to-peer code, like networking, punching through firewalls, like doing all these different things that are kind of really, really hard to do well. BitTorrent has their own P2P library, and all these networks have it. Skype had their own. There was no real like state of the like best practice library on the network on the internet for doing a peer-to-peer network, right? And this is kind of one of the first really great options. Can you hold on one second? Sorry.
Sure.
Washington, can you wrap that up? I gotta step aside for 1 second. Sorry.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, like Brian was saying, this is a distributed file system, and I mean, the best part of it is that you basically have a team of engineers working on IPFS that's their job, just to make sure that the data gets distributed correctly, that the networking engine works correctly. It's like, this is something that we don't really have to worry about anymore. We can really focus on, the more marketplace, the OpenBazaar protocol side of things, rather than, making sure that we have stable connections between peers. So at the end of the day, it just means that everything on the network is just much more robust.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. Someone just banged on my hotel room door for no reason. So.
What a dick.
Virginia Beach. What do you expect? But anyway, yeah, good. So I hope that was a great explanation. I didn't hear it. So.
Yeah, you did a great job. So, and with IPFS, do you guys expect less latency between nodes? I mean, is the network as a whole going to be quicker?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I was saying before, doing things like hole punching. If you're on a network that's really tightened down, or you're on a school network or something, jumping through those firewalls and stuff, it takes time to make the connections between nodes. libp2p is just super fast. I mean, it's amazing. I was on an airplane testing it out using their crappy airplane Wi-Fi, and it was fast. It was unnoticeable that it was much different. And so, yeah, it's really huge. And what's even cooler is that it also supports Tor, and Tor networks are notorious for being super slow. And it runs pretty snappy. It's pretty exciting. It's going to be really awesome to see people using that.
That's cool.
So with OpenBazaar 2.0, it sounds like the big things that are coming are IPFS integration, so people can run their stores without actually being connected to the network constantly, which is a big win. Native wallet integration, and then also the ability to integrate Tor and I2P, right? So, I mean, are those the big wins that we should be expecting from a 2.0 launch?
Well, I2P is conceptually could be supported, but we don't really have a wrapper for that yet. Okay. Tor is supported. Chris actually wrote the Tor functionality for IPFS and contributed back to them. So because we wanted to use it, and I2P could be done too. But yeah, out of the box, Tor will be supported, and the client is actually Tor aware. So if you're running the Tor browser bundle, or you're running the Tor daemon on your computer for other reasons or whatever, it will detect that, and it will help you route your stuff through that. It's pretty simple to get it going. We don't really have Tor Tor's not integrated into OpenBazaar. If you download OpenBazaar, it doesn't just have I want to use Tor. You have to have Tor in addition. Okay. But compared to setting up a store that supports a Tor hidden service and all these other things you got to do, it's substantially easier. And we're going to probably have some tutorials and guides and stuff on how to do it. But yeah, it's going to be really exciting. And I think those are some really huge tent poles. I mean, people have been asking for Tor support for a really, really long time. And I mean, our product is really about privacy and security of a marketplace. It's kind of hard to claim that when you can't even support some of these technologies. So it's a really great hurdle to be able to get over finally.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so we should be expecting IPFS, Tor, native wallet support, and then lastly is the mobile app. So maybe Washington now can tell us a little more about what to expect from mobile on Tor.
Yeah,
I mean on OpenBazaar.
Oh God, if we could have Tor on mobile, that'd be good. But yeah, mobile took us completely by surprise. We had not planned it. I was actually on my holidays, end of December. I like to save up and take a big chunk of holidays in December, and I think the day before my holiday started, I saw something on Product Hunt called JSONette, and it basically allowed you to make a mobile app without knowing a bunch of Swift or Objective-C code, using this really nifty framework. And I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. I'll just tinker with this. And so in spare time of my holidays, I was just tinkering around, just a simple remote control for the API for the OpenBazaar server. And then things just started to escalate from there. So by the end of the holidays, I came out of it going, I think I could make a pretty cool prototype. And then towards the end of January, it became clear that, okay, I think I can do something production for this. And then it was about April that we met up with the entire team, and I kind of showed them what I'd done with mobile and how far along I was. And, we just made the decision that, okay, well, this cost us nothing. we didn't have to go and hire a bunch of, mobile devs to get this done, and we just started working on it, and we threw a little bit more resources, so it's not just me doing it, thank God. And we've been working on mobile, but the vision behind mobile is a little bit different from desktop. I think the desktop app is your fully featured app. You have literally access to everything. You can run Tor, you can hook it up to another wallet if you want, you can run it on Zcash, etc., etc. And that's fantastic. And the full decentralized experience is at your disposal on the desktop. The mobile app is something that Obi-Wan has made to make the OpenBazaar experience a lot more fitting to what expectations are of a marketplace that you typically find. So there are some things that we do, like we do hosting for nodes, so you don't have to worry about downloading your node and putting it on a cloud if you want to access something on your mobile. Not that you'd have to, but if you're going to do a mobile app, you have to talk to your node, and your node has to be somewhere. And we don't have a binary to make it run on your mobile phone yet. So we're going to be doing hosting for you. So we're going to have the infrastructure for that. And we do Obi-Wan search bundled in the app. We do a bunch of stuff that makes the experience much more user-friendly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think the design approach has been a little bit different too. OpenBazaar, the desktop, has its own kind of design feel, and then the mobile is a little bit closer to a little bit Obi-Wan design and branding. And I think more importantly, the kind of vision behind the mobile app, I've kind of hinted at it before, but it's kind of like WeChatifying cryptocurrency. And there is a lot of commerce that takes place on WeChat because it has, this wallet built into WeChat, and that's completely revolutionized and transformed how society works in China. And they don't actually have an integrated marketplace within WeChat. They kind of do this weird web hybrid thing connecting to JD, I believe, or something like that. Whereas I think this will be bringing Bitcoin, which doesn't have any of the restrictions that you see on WeChat, and it has the marketplace protocol, the OpenBazaar protocol, directly built into it. And it will have chat, and it's going to have some social features. Like on launch, it will have basic following and messaging, but then it's going to expand out and have some pretty nifty features. So it's very exciting where we're going to be taking the mobile app.
That's really cool. So users don't actually have to have a node running it. Well, I mean, they do have to have a node running, but they don't need to download any software on their home desktop computer. They can, if all they owned was an Android phone, they could run a full business.
Yes, completely.
That's so cool.
Now, the something I want to say here, because obviously hosting nodes is okay, doesn't that introduce a little bit of centralization? Like you're doing all the hosting infrastructure, and that's a fair question to ask. And we're certainly designing it in such a way where the things are going to be encrypted, and but I think it should, we have to say at this point is that the hosting infrastructure that we're building is like the first step into like a 2 or 3 step process that we want to do. Eventually, we want to put the full node on the mobile app so that we can eliminate the hosting infrastructure. But that's just going to take a little bit more time and patience. And there's no reason to delay bringing a mobile experience to OpenBazaar, because we need to throw a few more engineers at bringing the whole thing on natively onto mobile. So this is going to be like our opening salvo into mobile, and things are just going to get better and better from there.
That's exciting. Have you? Has there been any talk about doing essentially a full node implementation in the web browser, like with using IPFS.js, so you don't have to download anything? Is that feasible, or are there security issues, or have you talked about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if you were going to pass it off to me, but yeah, no, definitely. I mean, like that's kind of the ultimate idea. I mean, we had a team retreat where we got together in March in person, and we sat down and we're like, look, we want to do this mobile thing. And one of the things that people raised was like, well, this is not like fully decentralized, right? It's not a full node in your phone. And, we had to make the decision, like, are we going to wait 2 years until that's actually like truly viable? Or are we going to do something in the meantime to get people, still using it? And, I think we're getting close to the point where we could build a full node in JavaScript on the phone. And ultimately we may end up having to do that because, we are somewhat putting the cart ahead of the horse by saying, oh, this uncensored marketplace is going to get, its app thrown onto the Apple App Store, and they're not going to take it off. Who knows? Like maybe some people start selling some stuff that shouldn't be there. And we get ripped off the App Store. We don't know that yet, right? Like we don't know how they're going to respond because they control that. And so we may be forced into a situation where we have to go back to the drawing board and start thinking of this as more of a web, perspective. But like we have to try. And I think building a whole, like converting this all to JavaScript, it would be quite an endeavor, but it is kind of the future, and that's something we want to go after. So. Yeah, we're going to be starting that. Obviously, once we get 2.0 out the door and we're happy with it, and it doesn't require 150% of our time, we're going to start looking at what's next, and that's clearly on the list. So
that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and speaking of selling illegal stuff and all that stuff, I know a lot of people are interested.
A word from Mouse.
Wait, we're going to talk about illegal stuff? Okay, hold
on. So yeah, cheers, Brian. So, I mean, how do you guys protect yourselves from becoming the next, Ross Ulbricht or whatever, where the government's cracking down on you guys for writing code? Obviously, you're not probably centralizing it the way that they did, where they're actually being paid to have the stores and stuff, but do you guys have any fear in the back of your head about writing code that could be used to fund?
Only a fool would have no fear. Only a fool would have no fear. No, it's very sobering. We take it very, very seriously. Ultimately, we've said this a couple other times. We're writing code and we're defining a protocol and how people use that protocol. I mean, just because you sell something illegal online doesn't mean you go up and lock up the people who created TCP/IP or HTML or IRC or anything like that. And this is no different whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense, and there's no clear association between the developers and any one of the open source technologies that we're using to build the protocol. All of the risk and all of the liability, we strongly believe, falls onto the people who are actually selling goods that may be illegal in whatever jurisdiction that they fall under. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to be selling something illegal, then it's no different than if you try to sell something illegal on Craigslist, which, by the way, is everywhere. You can just even here in Australia, I hop onto Australian Craigslist and I see hundreds of listings for weed, and it's illegal here. And this is Craigslist. They can take it down. They have no excuse, and still it's everywhere. Or Instagram or any one of those things. Except that with OpenBazaar, if they were to approach, us and said, you need to take this down from the network, it's like, well, I'm sorry, we can't take it down because it's not ours to take down. We don't own it. We don't host it. And I think there's a little bit of nuance there in the sense that, we're obviously providing a gateway server, like you can access and browse aspects of the network without having to run a full node. And, we can certainly choose not to share certain content that we find, offensive or, is not legal for us to share because of the jurisdiction that the company is under. And certainly for mobile, for the hosting infrastructure that we have, if you're doing something illegal or you're selling something illegal, then we absolutely retain the right not to host your store anymore. And the OpenBazaar desktop app is there for you. If that sucks for you and, wherever you are specifically, it is legal, but where we are, it's not legal, then you can download the desktop app and then continue selling. But that's kind of the approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, it's a situation of like we're always trying to be responsible for less. Like we're trying to give the users more control continually. Whereas I think a lot of companies, it's the opposite, right? It's like, well, we'll give the users so much control at first so that they're like attracted to come to our platform. And then as they're hooked and they're stuck in our ecosystem, then we're going to like lock them down and start like making their lives hell. Yeah. In our case, it's more about like, let's get you guys interested in this and then we'll like expand it as much as we can. Like, let's start to retain less control of this stuff. And so, people may come out when we drop the OB1 mobile app, they may say, oh, you're doing hosting and all that. And I'm just like, look, we would love to get rid of that as soon as possible. Like we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to try and remove that business. Trust me, like we don't want to be in that business. It's expensive because there's nothing more expensive than having lawyers tell you, oh, you can't do that. And then you have to remedy it like we do. And so, it would be much better to be able to sit there and write open source code and just like live that life. So, I ultimately, it's a backwards business model. I mean, I think like a lot of people might not like that. Like our investors may not like completely agree with that. Like I think conceptually they agree with the idea of freedom of internet, but like a lot of people don't understand what that really means, right? Like it's disintermediating traditional marketplaces by taking away the only thing that makes you defensible as a business.
That's right. Yeah.
That's a really big pill to swallow. And the second part of that is like trying to figure out like, how do you make money in that new world? Yeah. But we can't stop that new world from coming. That's so right. It's either like you figure out how to do that and you end up being very happy, or you just like get, thrown away.
Crushed.
Because someone's going to eat your lunch. So
yeah. And ultimately, I think we've believed for the longest time that, when it comes to decentralized anything, any decentralized network, you can decentralize all the data that you want. You can decentralize as much as you can. And all you're doing is increasing the knowledge problem, which is the ability to ascertain what is going on in the network and where everything is. That's why BitTorrent, even though it's an incredibly successful protocol, it would be absolutely nowhere without Pirate Bay, or it would be absolutely nowhere without any one of the search providers that do tracking and they do crawling to see where all the content is. Exactly. And ultimately, but Google is the same. I mean, if you actually look at the internet, everybody's running their own server. It's kind of decentralized, but they actually point to where the content is. Ultimately, we see that that's where the value is. You can push absolutely everything to the nth decentralized level, but comprehending where all the data is and delivering value on search and discovery is actually pretty defensible if you can be the best at it.
Yeah.
Awesome. And man, there's a couple. So, and man, we have so much stuff still to cover. So, I don't care though. I'm really fascinated by everything you guys are doing. So, there's a couple of things I want to dive into, but do you think OpenBazaar is going to be really self-governing? because there's a lot of things that I think people don't really have a problem with. You know, like selling certain goods online, even some services, but there's some things that probably internally a lot of people struggle with, like human trafficking and things that in my mind are just evil at the core. Do you see OpenBazaar you know, attracting some of this sort of stuff, and if so, like, do you foresee the community being really self-governing about this sort of stuff? And I don't know.
I think personally, I think that like a lot of that stuff is very, like, it seems, I think because the media blows it up and it's such a controversial topic that like we feel like it's like this thing that's like so prevalent, but in reality it's such a small niche kind of group of people that are doing these things, and I think they stick together. So I think you know, in the cases of like if for some reason, you know, some influencer in those groups comes out and says, hey, I'm using OpenBazaar, like, yeah, maybe those guys start to move over to the platform because they kind of travel together and they do the things that they feel are like trustworthy enough to like support what they're doing. I don't know if this is still on their radar, you know, like I think that they're still using traditional old school technologies. I mean, we thought originally when 1.0 would come out that these drug people would like switch over immediately, because who wants to be on a marketplace that exits scams and does all these things and screws you over? But they still do it. Even Gwern wrote like a whole bunch of work. You know, he'd studied dark markets and all this stuff, and you know, he's like, nobody cares. Like the exit scams are not a compelling reason to leave these marketplaces, right? It's hard to overcome network effects, and so I don't see it being a problem soon, but if it does move, you know, there are going to be like important things that we have to solve. Like, how do we, like, originally our idea was around building these webs of trust, where if I'm like a child pornographer and I'm selling child porn, you know, obviously I'm not going to have like ratings and reviews towards that person because I've used their service, right? And the people that I associate with won't either. And so it kind of like naturally they get ostracized from the network because we don't have connections. And so if there's some sort of technology where like those trust relationships kind of weed those people out, or at least like kind of segregate them off to like some part of the network, that's kind of self-policing, right? Like you can make that happen. Now that's easier said than done, and it's something we've been like thinking about a lot. I mean, we invested some of OpenBazaar donation money into a project called Trust is Risk, which is doing some interesting stuff in that realm. And one of the people that, you know, and the person that heads that up, Dionysus, he actually was one of the original people that kind of really helped OpenBazaar get off the ground. And he's leading that because he really feels like a reputation and identity and trust system on decentralized networks is super important. And we're hoping it's portable across other platforms. And then there are a lot of other groups that are trying to work on this too. I think, you know, once we have that, this will become less of a problem. I mean, we see that on the internet, right? Like those guys are off in some corner of the web. They exist, but like when I'm searching Google, I don't like run across these people. Like when I'm browsing Facebook, I don't run across these people. They are just like they are in real life. They are pariahs. They exist. You cannot get rid of them. They will never go away, but at least they're not part of mainstream society. And I think it'll be the same way with OpenBazaar if we succeed. I don't see them like taking over the network in any way.
No. And I think it's the responsibility of search providers for OB1. And incidentally, we didn't mention this, but in OpenBazaar Desktop, you can obviously connect to OB1 search, but you can also connect to other search engines. But I think it's ultimately the responsibility of search providers for the network to filter out that sort of stuff that's unquestionably immoral. I mean, that's no question about it. And I know at least that's what we'll be doing. So
awesome. That's really great to hear. So, and then, you know, you guys also kind of touched upon, you know, your investors aren't necessarily happy with, you know, I guess the hosting or just certain things. But so I guess what I'm getting at is what's OB1's business model? And for all those that don't know, so OpenBazaar is built primarily by a company called OB1, which Brian and Washington both founded. And I guess you guys are kind of the sole company, but still OpenBazaar is a platform that can be forked and other people can turn the network, and you guys still, and have money from investors, and you guys need to make money. So what's the ultimate business model behind OB1?
I mean, a lot of our business model is developed pre-ICOs and tokens, right? Or at least tokens weren't like seriously considered, because it was more like colored coins and a little bit of counterparty and stuff like that, right? Just toys. So, but I still feel like our approach holds water substantially, because, the idea is that right now you have this idea that businesses have this like really, really heavy core of technology, right? Like, let's say Facebook, they have this platform, and what happens is there's users at the edge, and they're pushing data into this core, into this silo, and they're storing more and more data. And it's like their core gets bigger and more valuable as people pump more data into it, right? The more data they own, the more they know about their users, the more they know about the world. They can sell it for advertising, whatever. Well, now let's just deflate that whole core and take away all that data, and all you have left is like the technology and the protocol, or like the the platform. Well, how do you make revenue on that? You can't like sell. There's no data to sell. No one's going to buy the protocol, right? Well, that's where the token model comes in, right? If people say, "Oh, it's the protocol," we'll incentivize the protocol with a token, and then people want that. Our approach is, you have the protocol and the platform, and that's not super important. Yeah, like what's important is that, just like any other open source platform like Linux or whatever, the businesses that live on the edge that are making profit, they will help fund that protocol. They will feed the money in to drive that, because they all mutually benefit from it, right? If I'm a search engine on top of OpenBazaar, I need OpenBazaar to get better or change in certain ways, because my business depends on that. So I will help feed that in. I don't need a token to incentivize that. I'm already making money from my customers that like incentivize me to make it better, and have great ideas and creativity. So that's our concept. Is like OB1 is just one of these businesses in this outside ring of OpenBazaar that are going to help improve the protocol, because we want to make money. We want to make our customers happy and delighted to use OB1 mobile app or whatever it is. And so that's ultimately our business model. Now, it is important to actually have a protocol that works and a network that has users before you start generating revenue. That's usually how it works, right? Like, you can't.
Just not in crypto though. You just need a token, man.
Like in Field of Dreams, he was able to build the field and they came, but like that's generally not how it works.
Build the token and
corn token.
Yeah. So, that's our highest priority right now, but we're starting to move into the next phase, which is like, okay, what is OB1 actually going to provide the market? And so we've got a search capability. We've got the mobile app. We've got a couple other things in the pipeline, and we're hoping that people will help find those useful in order to operate on top of OpenBazaar. Just like the wallets and all these things provide value to the Bitcoin network, by being on top of it.
And really, that protocol is valuable, right? Because like on top of, you're essentially creating a protocol for decentralized trade, and that can be a lot more than physical products. So you could build, a decentralized Airbnb or a decentralized Uber on the same protocol, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, Washington, how many little mini white papers did you write about like use cases for this? I mean, he had auctions, he had futures trading, all these different things that you could do on this platform. I mean, really, it just takes the interest to actually make it happen. And I mean, user experience and UI and stuff is super important too. People don't want to use pieces of crap to do these things, but that conceptually, any platform where you have makers and takers and you have the security and the trust around it, you could do different things with it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, look, OpenBazaar is supposed to be a protocol for trade, and that encompasses e-commerce, that encompasses securities, financial security transactions, auctions, you name it. Anything can theoretically be supported. And just because it can be theoretically supported doesn't mean that it can be supported in OpenBazaar right now. It requires developers to come in there and contribute time to spec out exactly how the stuff will work and to actually commit code. And, over the years, we can kind of pick it up now when people come into the protocol and they're like, hey, can you do this? I'm like, yeah, we can totally do that. Cool, do it. I'm like, well, no, you need to help us because we're building it all for you already. We're building the protocol and everything. But, if you want to see, and this is the open challenge to anybody looking to do anything related to OpenBazaar. If you want something, you're going to have to go and do it. We're not going to make it for you because we're pretty damn busy building all of the essentials, but we'll absolutely help you if you're really interested in contributing. But, sort of expecting us to do it all for you is absolutely not going to work.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, you, Austin.
I was going to say, so I think we're close to segueing into opinions about the larger cryptocurrency space. And,
oh boy.
Yeah. I think a good segue. We could one more question on OpenBazaar that might help segue into that, and that is so for in the event that fees go up again, that clearly affects OpenBazaar and its users doing on-chain transactions. So I guess the question that could segue would be, does OpenBazaar have any plans to implement or work the Lightning Network into the protocol if fees get high? I guess we could start there. And
I think the Lightning Network is very, very fascinating. I really like the idea. And whether or not fees go up, we're going to take the Lightning Network seriously as far as thinking about how it will work in OpenBazaar. We've already had a little bit of discussion about how it could work. And there are definitely some wrinkles there, especially when it comes to having moderated transactions. So these are transactions between the buyer and the seller when you have a third-party moderator who is like the backup tie-breaking vote if there's some sort of a dispute.
Yeah.
All of that becomes very, very complex, especially in a multi-hop Lightning Network channel. And not only do you need to have, pre-signed transactions for scenarios where everything goes right, you also need to have pre-signed transactions for every possible disputed outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so the complexity just gets pretty enormous. It's not an easy problem to solve. It will take some time. But hey, the Lightning Network it's not really in production yet, so and it's nothing we have to worry about in the immediate future. I mean, even though Litecoin has got SegWit, it hasn't had this Lightning Network nirvana there.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't even have much transaction volume to begin with, but it's still not anything that is on our immediate radar. So I think it's likely that when the Lightning Network does come online in a more serious way, probably on Litecoin first and then on Bitcoin, within a year or so, then we'll probably start to take it more seriously and think about integrating it into the protocol. That's my thoughts, at least. But one thing that absolutely needs to be said, because literally everyone is, figuratively everybody is overlooking this, but Lightning Network channels require on-chain transactions.
That's right.
And if the fees are super high for on-chain transactions, then it's just not going to make sense for people to open Lightning Network channels. They're going to look at the upfront cost for opening a channel, and it's just going to disqualify a lot of people.
We've already seen this movie played out, right? Like, I mean, this is what Coinbase does, right? They've got 2 million wallets or whatever, more than that probably, and those people are all sending Bitcoin to each other for like nothing, really. Like, if I send Bitcoin to you as another Coinbase user, it doesn't cost anything, right? Because they have their own off-chain protocol. And this will be the same thing, but except that, you're going to pass on that on-chain transaction. You're going to have to deal with that. And now Coinbase is doing that, right? Like, the price goes up. They're like, oh, now the fees are your issue. Like you enjoyed that for a long time, this nirvana of like off-chain transactions that were free, but that's going away. It's not going to be any different. I think Lightning is interesting in microtransaction perspectives. Like if OpenBazaar, for instance, wanted to do like streaming video, or like Spotify, that would be really cool, because then you could open a channel and it would make sense. You know, you could do like a monthly channel, and the on-chain fee, maybe it's not that big of a deal. There's a lot of use cases where it's really fascinating. I mean, I like the Lightning team. I think it's a shame that that Joseph and Taj don't really work there anymore, and that their team is going. But I know that you know, Roast Beef and Elizabeth are still carrying that on, and then Blockstream's also working on it. I think it's going to be great. But there's a lot of stuff that's going on that's interesting. I mean, that's not the only scaling solution that is fascinating. I mean, I really love what Paul Storz is doing with Drive Chain. I think that's super underappreciated. You know, he's the kind of guy that doesn't he's not super ostentatious about how he presents his work, and I think he gets a lot of like harsh criticism that's probably unfair. But you know, this is the Bitcoin space, pretty cutthroat. There's a lot of interesting projects going on. I don't know I don't think there's any one panacea for like what we're experiencing. And that's why I think that's a big reason why we put a lot of our effort behind the SegWit 2x stuff, is that, you know, it's not the perfect solution, but it's a solution that actually can get executed, that the market will accept, that can push forward. And I think, and sometimes that's important to just get through the logjam and like say, okay, we live to fight another day. It's not ideal for everybody involved, but we just move forward. And some people are not willing to like accept that, but you know, ultimately the market speaks, and you have to just kind of go with it. So if UASF works out or something else, I mean, OpenBazaar is plenty willing to work with the outcome and keep going. We're not going to rage quit and move to Dogecoin.
So, and you know, I think that's an excellent segue into our next few topics, which, you know, we're going to talk about Bitcoin and all sorts of good stuff. So, I mean, what do you guys think is the biggest issue in Bitcoin right now?
Not enough white papers.
Or tokens.
I mean,
definitely not enough tokens.
The red herring is like the scaling debate, but for me, I think a lot of it is the pressure and the distraction that like the ICOs and stuff bring to the whole space. And the reason I say that is because, you know, regulatory pushback is something that happens in a delayed fashion. Like, like right now, we're not seeing anything. We're like, oh, these tokens are great and everything. But my sense is that they're going to catch up, and they're going to start, and they're going to come with some vengeance, and it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be nice. And all these people that kind of like shifted their entire roadmaps to kind of support this model are going to find themselves in like a really, really distressing situation. It's sort of like the exchanges having to move out of New York and all this stuff, right? Like, that's going to be a pain in the ass when we could be focusing on things that are more important. And ultimately, I see that as being a drag on something like Bitcoin, which is avoiding that mess, just because we're kind of similar things. And so I see that as more of the longer term problem that we're facing, and we need to be more proactive about encouraging these projects to be real, and encouraging users to like do research and understand that, and build frameworks around this where like they can understand it. I'm not saying necessarily regulatory compliance. Like, I don't like Krista Rose recently put an article out on, I don't know if it was like I can't remember where he published it, but like he was saying regulators should come and like bust these ICO guys and regulate them. And I think I normally don't agree with him, and I certainly don't agree with that, but I think it was an interesting kind of it was kind of almost sarcasm, you know. It was like it was satirical in a way. It was like, you guys should come do this because somebody needs to be an adult in the room. And I get that. And it's like, it was almost more of like a wake up call to the crypto community to say, would you rather have them regulating us and telling us what to do? Or can we get together and start thinking like, okay, we're being idiots right now. Like literally, are we really in a place where like ICO raises $150 million from anybody around the world, takes it, they dump it back into fiat, the price of Ether drops, and then they go on Twitter and brag, oh, hey, at least we protected ourselves by going back into fiat. I'm like,
oh no.
What? Like, what world are we living in? Like,
like
and everybody's like, golf clap for these guys. Like, they did a good job. It's like, what?
I hate them so much.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think some sanity is going to get restored in the future. So that's my answer. But scaling is important, obviously. But I think that's more of like a political infight over like who has control over certain source code, and that's the bigger thing that's going on. But yeah, I don't know. Washington.
What do I think the biggest issue in the Bitcoin community is right now? I think I agree. The red herring is scaling, but there's a fundamental disagreement over the vision of what Bitcoin is. That we have one big family that's not happy. Half, let's just try and be fair, and half is split down the middle. Half of them want to stay small, and the other half wants to actually scale. Well, no, let me be much fairer. Both sides want to scale. But they have different trade-offs that they're prepared to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not assume any maliciousness on either party, and let's just assume that is genuinely what they want. Then, when you have this kind of disagreement, you can't. It's gonna split. I don't see how we can. I don't see how Bitcoin can keep on going like this, because let me tell you something. Let's say SegWit is activated, and yay, everybody's happy. Everybody's rejoicing. But then we have the hard fork in 3 to 6 months. I don't know, whatever the time ends up being. And we're just going to kick the can down the road, and we're going to have a massive fight over there. Mm-hmm. But let's say Bitcoin Core supporters or supporters of the of that particular vision of scaling, let's just say by some miracle that they like the idea and that they participate with a hard fork. Well, okay, it's a year later and blocks are full again, and we're right back to where we started. I just don't see how this community can stay together. I think the differences are irreconcilable.
Oh.
I really hope I'm wrong. But I don't see how we can stay together.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It seems to be a very deep, almost a philosophical difference in what is most important about Bitcoin. And it does seem that ultimately it's irreconcilable. We haven't had, we lived in peace for many years until the scaling became sort of put the pressure on.
Yeah.
And SegWit, 2x, if that works out, that could buy us some time. But ultimately, those are really irreconcilable, philosophical beliefs. And I think they both have merit, and it may be fine. It would be sad to see this community split, but I think they both really do have merit. And if they do split, I think both chains will provide very different but very real value to the world.
I think it's such a sad situation too, that each side characterizes the other as like this hostile party, because, I personally, like the small block side will say like, oh, these companies and miners are trying to corporatize Bitcoin, and they're trying to sacrifice privacy and security and all this stuff of the network by doing these things. And I just don't buy that, because if you look at the history of these businesses, they were all founded by people that were just like them, that like started out with this as a vision. I mean, come on, Obi-Wan is corporatizing Bitcoin. We're 10 people, get the hell out of here, man. Like 5 of them are programmers. I mean, come on, corporatize. We got one marketing person. Yeah, she's gonna undo all this, so it's kind of silly, but like it works. It works really well to like, and then the big blockers, like, oh, the core devs, they're holding these escrow time locked funds, and they're just trying to protect their money, and and they just don't want anybody to be a part of the development process. I mean, I don't think so. I think these are a bunch of really, really bright people that they want this thing to keep going. They want the value to stay up. They want to keep going. They have this vision of like IT nerds taking over the world because we knew what was money and everybody else didn't see it. And I believe in that vision too. And so we should be working together. That's why I'm in SegWit 2x. I'm not in it to like screw over other people. I'm in SegWit 2x because I think it will help us move forward. Now, Washington may have seen the future and say like, oh, this is destined for a split. I'm still holding on to this idea that like maybe this will open people's eyes to say, hey, look, you know what? The August 1st deadline went by. Everything was smooth. We all worked together. We figured it out. And to be honest, I know the core people can argue forever about this, but I'm starting to see them contribute on the BTC1 repo. They're giving feedback to the code. They're trying to fix this and fix that. And here's a defect. And like, they're like participating. I never saw that in Bitcoin Unlimited. I never saw that definitely. In any of these other products, because they know that this is it. This is going to happen, and either they can help fix it and then we can move on, or they can let it fall and they're going to all suffer. So that's the market is speaking. Now, that doesn't mean that the hard fork in November or October or wherever it's supposed to happen is going to be peaceful. Yeah. I think it's going to be a clusterfuck, and that may be where Washington's future telling actually occurs. Like that may be the time where they're like, okay, this is enough. We're not going to help out on this, and it splits. And I think a lot of people are willing to do that, but you're starting to see the cracks a little bit in people's resolve. I mean, the fact that like Greg Maxwell pissed off all the core developers and like disagreed with them, just that happening. Like, when would you have imagined that in the last 3 years? Holy shit, he was like their Sherpa. Now he's like, now they're fighting, and Luke Jr. is leading his religious, thing through Bitcoin. So I don't know. I think ultimately all those UASF hats get shipped to Africa to the poor kids. It becomes a non-event, and
God,
like. This is it's just stupid. I don't know why we're fighting about this. Like, let's just help us go forward and move on.
Yeah, well, my distinct hope out of all of this is that, at the end of the day, I just cannot believe the core developers and people who subscribe to that particular vision really see any problem with 2 megabyte blocks. I mean, really. Come on, guys. No. The hard fork process is absolutely, it's tricky and needs to be navigated. But to say that, everybody's not ready and there's not consensus, that's bullcrap. Absolute bullcrap. You talk to anybody in the space who, runs a business serving customers on Bitcoin, they've been ready for 2 years to go for it. I mean, there's just, that I've invented a little term. It's called, it's called the cryptographer's sharpshooter problem. That's when you draw a circle around a bunch of developers and cryptographers and call that consensus, right? It's a play off the Texan sharpshooter fallacy, where, shoots a bunch of stuff into the wall, draws a circle and go, wow, I'm really accurate. And like, well, you can't draw a circle around, yourselves and say, look, we don't have consensus when the rest of the board is filled with, a supermajority. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that my hope and my goal is that, SegWit 2x is successful in activating SegWit, even though I don't think it's necessarily the most perfect solution. I think it's a decent compromise if it's atomically coupled with a hard fork. I think that was critical. That this is what kicked everything off. Yeah. If that is successful, and I really don't believe that the core developers will set fire to the protocol and chuck a rage quit or spearhead a fork just to 2 megabyte blocks, especially when Litecoin and all these other different cryptocurrencies have different properties which effectively have larger block sizes, and it's not an issue for them.
Yeah.
And especially when you have people like Gun Sirer, and Gun Sirer, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I'm sorry, man. When he publishes a paper demonstrating that anywhere up to 4 megabyte blocks are completely safe, and that's an old study.
He also
I
did
don't think
say Bitcoin was going to fail. So
yeah, that's true. That was a long time before.
With a grain of salt, though. That is the ultimate.
Yes.
Do your own research.
But I think his study was very, very good, and ever since, he's done incredible work in Bitcoin. But my point is that 2 megabyte blocks are literally not the end of the world, even if you subscribe to their point of view.
Yeah.
So what are we doing with SegWit 2x? We're buying time. We're buying time to test out the hypotheses that the Lightning Network will substantially reduce on-chain fees.
Sure.
All right. I don't think it will, but let's test it out. Let's get some data. Let's get some evidence. We're buying time for Schnorr signatures to be deployed. Will it have a major effect? Will have some effect. It's not, I disagree with Adam Back. It's not a scaling solution. It's an efficiency, a really nice efficiency, and it does enable some cool new features. It's not a scaling solution. It doesn't take us up an order of magnitude, like several orders of magnitude. That's scaling. We're also buying time for masks and anything else that anybody else can come up with until we have to consider hard forking again because on-chain fees are escalating. But this is where I come back to my earlier statement, where I think the differences are irreconcilable because one side is perfectly fine with on-chain fees being up to $20, $100. They don't have an issue with that. They don't see that Bitcoin is supposed to be used as eCash. All right, they see it as some sort of settlement network and BitGold and all this other stuff that I disagree with. And the other side does see it as eCash, and you cannot have a payment network that serves the world. You can't even have a settlement network that serves the world with on-chain fees that are $5, $10, $20. So sure. I think unless there is some incredible discovery, some kind of protocol, some kind of technology that is discovered that allows us to scale up while reducing on-chain fees.
I wonder if actually these people that support Bitcoin being a digital gold, if we take away the use cases of gambling, drugs, and speculation, will they agree that this is still a valuable digital gold? Because I guarantee you that people that are saying that they don't need an OpenBazaar, they don't need a social network with Bitcoin, they don't need all these other little apps on top of Bitcoin, I wonder if they actually take away the ability to use it as gambling, drugs, or speculation, if they still feel that way. Because ultimately, these things affect that as well.
Definitely.
I think they would. That's my sense is that they would. Yeah. But yeah, this comes down to that core difference in philosophy, and I really do think there are values to both sides. Like there really is. I really see a value. I mean, everyone can see a value to really cheap on-chain fees for everyone in the world, obviously. But I do think that there is also a value in having even if not everyone can use it, having a chain that everyone can verify.
Yep.
And and if you can't have both, there are people who will choose one as being more important than the other. And I really see value in both. If the big blockers and small blockers do fork Bitcoin and there do end up being two long-term forever chains, I will invest in both because I see value in both. I really do.
Yeah. Well, it's all an experiment.
Hold on. So I mean, isn't but like at the heart of it, the big issue, like I think we can all agree on, is Bitcoin has problems making decisions. Like to me that is the problem. Like we cannot come to consensus because we have miners that are running the network that are basically they are incentivized to act in a certain way for themselves.
Of course.
And we don't have a mechanism for offering a form of governance for the network.
Unfortunately, I think
and it only takes 5% of the mining network to downvote anything right now. I mean, if you need 95% consensus, that's great to make a change. But the problem with it, you only need 5% to vote something down too. So
yeah, but that's also self-set. I mean, we don't have to make the threshold 95%. Secondly, I think the worst part about this is that I think the miners really benefit regardless of outcome, which makes it even more perverted because they don't give a fuck whether it goes one way or the other, and they can play with us. And so I think there is this situation where they like play both sides against each other. It's a lot like little kids and their parents. They ask daddy if he can do something, and then he says no, and they go and ask mommy, and she says yes, and then they get their way, right? Like they can always like play both parties against each other. And having met the miners and also the core devs, which over the last year I've like really made a concerted effort to like try and understand both sides and talk to people in person and stuff. We Washington and I had lunch with Jihan and some of his colleagues. Like I just think all these guys are trying to do what's best for them, and if that means playing games or supporting this today and supporting that tomorrow, they all do it. And so this is a huge, massive experiment in game theory. It's fascinating. To be honest, I know people get upset, but you know what? I don't have like $5 million of my net worth tied up in Bitcoin. I have a business, but I mean, life goes on if it doesn't work out. And we're doing this because we ultimately believe in what's going on, and it's all new territory for everybody. So, but
I mean, like at the end of the day, after we get through this 2 megabyte block SegWit, after we get SegWit activated, however it unfolds, we're always going to have this problem with Bitcoin. Like you're always going to have contentious debates. Like no matter what the change is, if it's going to be to add privacy, like, there's a million different ways. I mean, there's several plausible ways to add privacy. There's going to be contentious debates on that. There's going to be contentious debates on like handling almost any decision that the network needs to be made. So to me,
but you build off of things like what you guys are doing with like proof of stake and stuff. It's like, you're like, I know the preamble to the show, you talked about there was some change and you guys made it with a hard fork and like it seemed to be working. And I think it's the same way with Bitcoin. Like it doesn't necessarily always have to be like one technology over another. What it is it's small accomplishments that people build on top of. Like if SegWit 2x works out, or let's say UASF works out, then the people, they go, okay, that's a model we can follow. Like Ethereum did the same thing, right? They hard forked this whole thing with the DAO and they solved the problem and they moved on. Their community doesn't give two shits about the fact that like the Bitcoiners think that like Ethereum is blah, 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 is a scam and that they like rewrote the chain. They don't care. They're just doing their thing. And Bitcoin can do the same thing. We can get through SegWit 2x. We can just put our tails between our legs and move on. And then when the next thing comes up, we can say, hey, you know what? Miners, businesses, core devs, we didn't like it, but we did it and we survived, and maybe we can do something similar, or we can, we didn't like this or that about it and we fix it and we move on. All these projects are doing the same kind of thing. And, we can criticize proof of stake, we can criticize proof of work, we can do all these different things. None of these are perfect. Yeah. We have to figure out what's the best combination. In the next 10 years, maybe, a decade from now, we'll be like, well, ultimately this was the thing we should have done, or that was the thing we should have done. But we have to all be trying these different things. Otherwise, we'll never find out what really, really works.
Sure.
You don't want to die of a theory, basically.
Yeah. And so, and I guess this brings me to one of my questions, because I know you got to leave soon, Brian, but it sounds like we've talked a little bit about what Decred is doing, and I'm wondering, based on what you guys do know, and I can dive into a little more detail, but what are your opinions on what the Decred project is doing?
Go ahead, Washington.
Well, okay. I don't really know that much about Decred, apart from my Twitter feed, that a lot of people are very supportive of it. From what I've heard, it has a unique approach to governance, and I think that on principle, that's wonderful. I think we need more of these experiments. I think there's just too much bullcrap.
Yeah.
Like when I say there's too many white papers, I mean it. There's too many white papers. People need to start building stuff and need to start testing stuff. So tell you what, if Bitcoin crashes and burns, or Ethereum crashes and burns, or any one of these cryptocurrencies crashes and burns, there's going to be a post-mortem, and they're going to figure out, okay, what went wrong? How can we fix it? You know, and you can either wait for that post-mortem report, or you can have a bunch of other different experiments running in the background and see what survives. And I think that's a great approach.
Yeah.
And one thing I had really hoped for Bitcoin was the ability, this is an old Bitcoin maximalism argument, but Bitcoin will always be the dominant cryptocurrency because any new innovation that is created on some other altcoin can be integrated into Bitcoin. Well, we can't even increase the bloody block size to 2 megabytes. I doubt any other innovation. Well, it's the same reason why Zcash exists, right? Yeah. There was no chance they were going to get that protocol integrated into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
No way. It's not going to happen. It's much as cool as it could be. Now, okay, of course, there's the question about extension blocks or side chains or federated side chains or blah, blah, blah. None of that stuff really exists anymore. Yes, it may be coded, but it's not in the hands of users anymore. If it's not in the hands of users, it does not exist. So I think running these experiments where users actually have it in their hands is brilliant, because that way we all learn. Yeah. We can have these, if nothing else, huge bug bounties for all of these different ideas. So yeah, I'm very supportive.
Awesome. And so, I guess you guys aren't too knowledgeable what's going on with the Decred network, but what they've essentially built is a way to take your tokens, your Decred tokens or Bitcoin, and it's forked off of btcd, which they built, but they provide a way that you lock up your funds for up to 142 days. So you should receive your funds back within like 28 days, but it could take up to 142 days. And what happens is you get the ability to vote on the validity of the next block. And on top of that, you also get to set vote bits, which can dictate the future of the protocol. So by doing that, what they've essentially done is built a method that provides a sense of governance for the users. And to me, like, the Bitcoin core devs ultimately want this form of governance. Like Luke Dash Jr. just released this stupid Coinbase, Sybil resistant attack bullshit, like that just takes, any Coinbase user, they could hold Ethereum or Litecoin, they don't have to hold Bitcoin, and then be able to vote, on what people want in the network. And what this does is take users that actually have funds in Decred and provide them a method of voting on proposals and voting on the future of the protocol. And to me, like, that is like a really fundamental thing that's why I become really bullish on the project, because to me, the project can always move forward. Like when our privacy stuff comes out and it, in the next few months, we're going to have a vote on it. And people are going to say yes, or they're going to say no. And if they say no, we're going to, if they say yes, it's great, and we integrate it. If they say no, then we move on and we try to figure out a way to make it better. But we don't get into these year-long debates where we're arguing over nonsense. And to me, like, that at the heart of Bitcoin is the biggest issue. And I don't foresee, like you were saying, Washington, like, adding bigger blocks, like, is already a fucking, like, total pain in the ass. Like, you're not going to be able to add the technology or the mechanisms that the network needs to carry on. So in my opinion, I think that having more currencies is a good thing. And, certain currencies are going to own certain parts of the network, and it's going to benefit everybody. And in my opinion, I think Bitcoin should be that reserve currency. And I'm like more supportive that nothing happens, and that Bitcoin proves to be this thing that is impossible to change. And maybe that is a good thing.
Yeah, there is a certain contingency of people that feel that way about Bitcoin as well. I mean, status quo is, it's not the worst possible thing that could happen. I mean, we are still trading it, and it's still valuable right now, whether the block size is bigger or not. I mean, my biggest concern about any other project in the space right now is that they have not seen the popularity and the volume and the scale that Bitcoin has. And so for any of these projects, no matter how well
Sure.
thought out that they seem, to claim, oh, this is going to fix everything, is kind of dubious, because they haven't been field tested, and
Sure.
that's kind of a shitty way to like defend Bitcoin, but it's true. I mean, Ethereum has wildly surpassed my expectations for them. If I had thought that they were great, I would have invested when they first came out, and I didn't. But they've been able to do a bunch of things that, like, you can criticize them for, but like, they did it, and they did what they said. And so, all these things are going to be valuable in certain ways, and a lot of them are going to die and move on. But we take the best of what these things all bring, and we move on. Like MySpace, had like interesting innovations that Facebook and these other platforms, adopted. Same with Friendster. All these technologies build upon each other. That's what's so great
Sure.
about technology to begin with, right? It's the evolution. Like, you can pretend to say, oh, hey, Google's going to last forever, but I guarantee you within the next like 30, 40 years, Google is going to probably be gone, or it's going to be diminished in what it does, and there'll be some other new thing that comes out that does what they're doing better, which is just the way it is. And it's going to be the same with these coins. I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 years Bitcoin isn't Bitcoin anymore. It's maybe a lesser coin, and something else has taken its place. But that's part of the process.
Yeah.
The stuff moves fast. Andreas Antonopoulos, he says, you can't have scaling problems until you have scale.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a really good point. Like, it's really easy to sort of point to Bitcoin and say, like, oh, that community is garbage. Ours would make much easier work of these things. But you don't really know until you face it. In fact, I think I suspect that going way out on a limb, but that's where the best fruit is, right? That if you would see that the biggest increase in Decred price would happen not now when everyone's getting along, but when there's a really contentious issue and it's resolved quickly with your with the on-chain voting mechanism. And if that happens, then you really prove this like real value. It's working now, but the real, like, the problem that the Decred is trying to solve is the governance problem. Mm-hmm. And you don't really know, you haven't taken the final exam whether or not it's going to work until you actually solve a real nasty political issue with it. And when that happens, if it works, that's going to be huge.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, so if they're able to accomplish that, then they become a model example of how to do something. And, like, Ethereum had a chance with the hard fork to, in my opinion, to say, you know what, these people lost all this money in the DAO, and sorry, but like, the sanctity of the protocol is more valuable than that. And they passed on that, and they said, this is the way our chain works. So now we can't use that as a beacon, I don't think. And chains that feel that they have those principles in mind, like protection of user funds, regardless of, whatever the network is in charge of, maybe they see that as a model, like, oh, the hard fork wasn't that bad. If we lose all these people's funds, we'll just return it by forking the chain and doing this. But others look at it as the antithesis of what they do. So, yeah, I mean, I totally look forward to seeing more of these things. And it's not like we've learned a lot from other platforms, what's acceptable. I mean, to be honest, people complain about the hard fork of Ethereum, but it wasn't that horrible. I mean, ETH Classic exists, and you know what? In some ways, there's two factions that believe in two different types of Ethereum, and they're doing their own thing, and there's no fights between those people anymore. Mm-hmm. Washington's split concept with the Bitcoin may happen. Maybe there'll be like a Bitcoin that goes off and does its own thing, and there's an eCash, and they both coexist, and they're happy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Perhaps that is the way it works, and then everybody will be like, they're just like Ethereum, So
ultimately, I think that these sorts of things are the way they're supposed to be resolved.
Sure.
All right.
Well, okay, so we're gonna have to wrap up, but I guess one thing I just wanted to finish on. So the vote that we actually had was actually really contentious within the community.
Really? Interesting.
So I know Brian has to leave. Just to give me like 1 or 2 minutes, but the miners themselves, we're not representative of our community at all, because the people that were stakeholding had like 92, 93%, you know, proof for, you know, for voting through that change on the block. So like I do argue that we had actually a very contentious vote.
Nice.
But it didn't feel contentious because the stakeholders are the ones that care about our protocol. And most people may or may not know this, but so there's actually dual mining between Ethereum and DCR. And my prediction is that most of the people that are mining DCR are just constantly dumping it on the market. So we don't have the mining community that I have to mute you, Brian. I'm sorry. We don't have the mining community necessarily that Bitcoin does. But what I do feel is that the solution that the Decred team has built is extremely elegant. It solves 51% attacks problems. We already have mining networks that have 51%, and they can't control the network because the stakeholders sign off on every block. So, you know, I think as the Decred network becomes more popular, there's going to become more contentious debates that happen. And as we continue to grow in size, like, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how we evolve versus some of the other projects.
Yeah, and seeing how fast and smoothly your community resolves those contentious debates will really will over and over again set examples for good government. They'll prove to people it works.
Yeah. And one of the last things I want to add is it's incredibly difficult to like set up a stake. So the people that we attract that are stakeholders are very knowledgeable in our community. So that's another thing, that we're trying to make stakeholding really easy, but at the same time, I'm like, maybe we shouldn't, because the people that do hold our currency are really, really involved in everything that's going on. So, I mean, they're probably the people that are watching right now, you know, some of our larger stakeholders, and they're going to go back and, you know, watch this video and learn everything about what we're doing. So, yeah. So, all right, well, we're going to wrap this up, and I really want to thank the OpenBazaar guys, Brian and Washington, for coming on the show. It's so awesome to have you guys on the show. I'm really excited about everything you guys are doing. I'm going to, you know, push our developers now to somehow try to work with you guys and integrate Decred, as much as you may or may not like that, but you know,
we don't mind.
Yeah, awesome.
So, do you guys have a release date?
Oh yeah.
We don't have an official release date, but we're aiming for last 2 weeks of August, sometime around there, because I think we'll probably be ready before that, but we just wanted to give a cushion after the whole August 1st debacle to see how things shape up. So we're just kind of putting a little cushion there. But yeah, like pretty soon we're going to be releasing the first full feature complete alpha release. And, you know, the next month or so is going to be just like testing the crap out of it to make sure it's ready for release. But I mean, everything is pretty much in there. We're ready to roll.
Right on.
So, all right. Well, I just want to thank all of our viewers out there, people that watch the show later. Thank you so much for joining in. And finally, and lastly, I'm just going to give a quick plug to Cryptocurrencies, who made this shirt that I'm wearing today. If you guys want to buy this shirt that I was wearing in the show today, you can go to cryptocurrencies.com/merchandise and get your Decred Credhead shirt. So awesome. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining in on the show, and we'll see you guys next week, hopefully. All right, take care.
All righty.
Thanks a lot.